What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Wide Body Nation. I feel like we're picking up where we left off like a year and a half ago, because I used to bring you guys videos from the cockpit of my 2021 Red Eye, and now we're in the 2022 Jailbreak. Very similar spec. It feels right. So today we're talking about break-in recommendations, or lack thereof, for Hellcats, Scat Packs, and kind of any cars as well, any performance cars, because a lot of different shops, a lot of different people have their 2 cents, including the manufacturers. So we're gonna bring kind of all angles to you guys today and just use a little bit of common sense. So, all right guys, one question I get a lot, and I also have for this specific car, is does it even let you do full power when you first get the car? Like, we're at 41 miles right now, so we are at that under 100 mile break-in period. So against my better judgment, I'm gonna give it a good amount of sauce here on the gas pedal, and we're gonna see how much power it gives us. Obviously we have the red key, so it should be 807 capable to the crank. Now we are during our break-in period, so this is not something I would necessarily advise you guys to do, but because I'm in the position I am and I have the question, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys and actually find out for myself if we have any limitations that the car is putting on us right now, or if we have what could be considered full power, I guess. So I'm gonna go ahead and send it. All right, so that was, it was a pull. I did not just floor it off the rip. I tried to give it a little bit of time to catch up so that we're not just shocking the entire drivetrain, but obviously we were in boost there. It looks like we got a little over 600 horsepower, so it does not seem like the car is limiting us on the top end. I guess my question, as we break the car in and as the car realizes that we're, at 100 miles, at 300 miles, at 500 miles, or at 1,000 miles, perhaps it will be more responsive. Keep in mind that that was in, here, I'll go back to SRT pages so you can see what mode we were in. So we were just in auto for that one. This is the drive mode we were in. So obviously we weren't in track, we weren't in street, or we're not even in like a custom mode or nothing like that. So, throttle response and transmission especially was just in street mode, and I was just doing auto. There was no paddle shifts or nothing like that. So it appears that they at least make it seem like we have full power, full capabilities of the car. But I've heard from many different owners that at 500 miles or at 1,000 miles, they feel like their car wakes up or lightens up or whatever, but maybe that's just like a mental, like a placebo effect or something like that. But I felt like that was valuable as for just a valuable quick test, because I mean, it was more for me than it was for you guys. But if you guys get any value from that, then there you go. With that being said, obviously this video is going to be sponsored by Destroyer1320.com. That is the best way to prevent your car from being stolen the way that mine was stolen, which was the thieves breaking in and pulling the neutral strap, which is conveniently accessible right here, and you guys can probably see that on camera. So use my code WBN, Destroyer1320.com. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. There's plenty of videos out there where I explain it more, but I mean, come on now. But break-in recommendations. So we are currently at 28 miles on this brand new 2022, basically fully loaded Jailbreak. And there's not a ton of videos out on YouTube about recommendations for Hellcat break-in. There's a lot in the forums, the tippity-typity forums, but you have to read to do that, and I'm not very good at reading. So I used what little amount of reading comprehension I have, and I brought out the manual. And for some reason in the manual on page 86, where it says you're supposed to see the break-in recommendations, it only has the recommendations for the 3.6 liter and 5.7 liter. And I'm not seeing anything about the 6.2 Hellcat motor or the 6.4 Scat Pack motor. So, and this is a 2022 owner's manual. for the Charger, which is odd. So we can infer a couple of things. One, you could basically just be like, hey, full send, I don't care. Two, you could just, you know, look up an older owner's manual, because apparently the older owner's manuals have the different motors broken out. They have like the 5.7 and the 3.6, one recommendation, and then they have the 6.4 and the 6.2 and another recommendation. So I'm just gonna go based off what previous owner's manuals have said, and I'm gonna tell you guys that the previous owner's manuals basically said for the first 100 miles, you're supposed to keep it under 55 miles an hour and keep it under 3,500 RPM. In my unprofessional opinion, the RPM is probably the more important of those two things, especially because if you drive under 55, that could be a safety concern on a highway where maybe the speed limits are 65 or 70 miles an hour, right? So that lines up, though, the under 3,500 RPM lines up with a lot of different shop and manufacturer and personal recommendations. Most people generally agree that you should keep it, you know, kind of out of boost and out of the crazy rev ranges for the first few hundred miles. Now, from 100 to 300 miles, the old owner's manual said you could go up to 5,000 RPM and up to like 65 miles an hour, which again, I'm thinking that the 65 mile an hour and the mile an hour restrictions are more for not the motor, but for the drivetrain, like the brakes, like bedding in the brakes, for maybe wearing in certain parts of the transmission, etc., because the mile an hour thing just doesn't make a lot of sense to me from an engine perspective, because the engine is connected to the transmission, which is connected to the wheels. So engine RPM is modulated by a bunch of different things. So those two things do not match up, right? And then the old owner's manual, I think it's like the 2019 owner's manual, which is the one that I watched a video on where the guy was referencing the 300 to 500 mile break-in period. You can go pretty much up to red line. You're just not supposed to go over like 80 miles an hour. So again, seems like they're focused on breaking in the drivetrain almost more than they are the engine, because I'm used to like Subarus and Corvettes where they tell you, you know, first 500 miles don't go over 3,500, or first 1,000 miles don't go over 3,500. So as far as what I actually think, from my experience, you know, over the past 10-ish years driving all the different types of performance cars, I think it's just about using common sense. Launching, I would say the worst thing to do for your brand new car is probably a hard launch from a dig, because that pretty much hits everything as hard as possible, right? It hits every part of your drivetrain, including the engine, including the transmission, including your axles, including your wheel. It hits everything as hard as possible with a massive shock. And so, you know, that's probably the worst thing to do for break-in. As far as the speeds go, as long as you're not slamming and like quickly overheating the brakes, going from like 150 to 0 or something like that, and then like maybe turning your car off, I don't see that as quite as big of a deal. But you know, that's just me. And then obviously with, you know, keeping it out of boost, keeping it under certain RPMs, generally yes. I think one of the things I've definitely heard as a consistent recommendation, no matter what car or what shop or what manufacturer you talk to, is that when you're breaking in the motor, you want to vary the RPM. So like, you know, a lot of people, when they hear, oh, 500 mile break-in period, they're like, oh yeah, I'll just go on the highway and cruise control to 80 miles an hour real quick, so that I can, you know, basically have the car broken in like 5 hours, because, you know, like 5 hours, 6 hours times 80 miles an hour, that's your 500 miles basically right there. So that is a way to do it, but in theory, if you're cruise controlling at 80 miles an hour, the car is just going to be sitting at like 2,500 RPM for 6 hours, and it's not going through the rev range. It's not having the transmission actually go through its own RPMs and rev ranges and actually exercising all of the different gears. It would just be presumably sitting in like 7th and 8th gear, or whatever your top overdrive gears are for your transmission. So I would say the biggest takeaway is use common sense. It's kind of like warming up when you're at the gym. Like, are you gonna go hit a 1 rep max PR for max weight off rip when you are not warm? You could, and depending on how old you are, depending on your level of fitness, you may or may not be able to hit it, and you may or may not get injured. But if you're gonna be on the safe side, you can pretty much always be on the safe side by warming up, by being flexible, by stretching, and all those things. So with the car, it's the same way. Warming up the car, being relatively nice to it while exercising it through its paces in the first 100, 300, 500 miles, and then really capping it off. A lot of people have their own 2 cents about the first oil change. In my opinion, you really can't go wrong changing the oil early, like 500 or 1,000 miles, because when you drain that oil, put it in, drain it into an actual catch pan and not into somewhere where you can't see it, and check that oil. There should be small, shiny particulate, but there should not be chunks. It should not be milky. It should not be anything other than just kind of dirty and maybe a little bit glinty from the bearings, from everything wearing in properly, right? And if you guys are kind of curious like how glinty or lack thereof your oil should be, maybe do it with a mechanic, do it with a friend who's been around for a second, and they'll be able to tell you what's normal and what's not. So with that being said, we're off to the gym. Gonna go get our lift in, and yeah, I hope you guys are feeling at home like I am, back in this comfy lazy boy feeling. Raptor, like this thing is wider than the truck I towed it home in yesterday, which is hilarious. It's just such a ridiculous car. Everyone loves it. The amount of thumbs up I got when I was towing this thing on the open trailer was out of control. Everybody was speeding up, grabbing a picture of it on the trailer, and then speeding by me, like giving me the thumbs up and waving at me. So it's fun to be back, guys. I will tell you that. Whew, that pre-workout is hit me in the throat, but appreciate y'all tuning in. Obviously, we have a boatload of videos coming y'all's way. Anything from theft prevention to performance to many other things. So don't forget to check out Destroyer1320.com. We actually do have a price increase coming soon, as you guys probably, it just makes sense. Everything's going up. We're feeling on our end from the manufacturer side, which is unfortunate, but it is a reality that we live with today. But luckily you guys have my coupon code, which will offset most of that price increase, because a lot of you guys forget to use my darn coupon code, which kind of blows my mind. So WBN, when you guys are checking out at Destroyer1320.com, the 2022s are slightly different, so we'll have those on the website very soon. I am testing the final prototype on this car right here, and that is why I've already got it set up like this. Prototype's actually sitting here right off camera, and that is about it, folks. Appreciate y'all tuning in, and I will see you guys for the next video.